guys, how are we? You're very, very welcome to today's episode of the podcast. I hope that you're keeping well and that you're having a nice day or evening. I also hope you're listening to this somewhere relaxing. Maybe you're on a train, a plane, or walking around the city. In any case, thanks for tuning in. As always, the transcript is in the description below. It has all the text and you can find some definitions for new and useful vocabulary. So that said, I'd like to remind you that this podcast is about noticing things, and we should notice things when we study. There are two main types of language study: extensive and intensive. Extensive means you're exposed to a lot of the language in general life, watching TV, listening to music or the radio, or chatting with friends. It's broad and relaxed. Intensive, on the other hand, means focused study. And that's kind of what we're doing here. For these 10 minutes, I'd love it if you could give your full attention to English, focusing completely on noticing patterns, sounds, and rhythm. 10 minutes of complete focus is much better than an hour of half watching a TV series in English while scrolling through Instagram. But hey, you can do whatever you want. You're adults. Okay, so let's get into today's topic. And it's something I really enjoy speaking about because if you're one of my students, you've probably seen this in your feedback at some stage. And it's the difference between mustn't, must not, and don't have to, or doesn't have to. So before we jump in, a quick note. I recommend looking back on your notes. If you have a teacher, or if you're studying with me, or if you're using AI to study, and maybe you're recording yourself and getting some feedback, please check your notes. Read them carefully. Read them out loud. It's free and it's great speaking practice, and it helps you to internalize correct structures. So it can also help you carry new vocabulary into future sessions. So I can't stress it enough. It's a really good language learning habit to form. Now, on to the topic of the day. The verbs or the verb forms and patterns should, must, and have to. So I like to call these parent language verbs. Think of that classic voice. You should do your homework. You must clean your room. You have to put your clothes in the laundry. So that's kind of language that sticks with us from childhood, rules, advice, and obligation. Let's start with should. We use should primarily for advice, criticism, or expectation. So for example, you should read your feedback and review your lesson notes. That's advice. You should stop smoking. Depending on the tone of your doctor, that could sound like advice or criticism. If you keep studying consistently, your language skills should improve. That's an expectation. Okay, now on to must and have to. Must is used for rule setting and expressing strong internal motivation. You must dress appropriately for work. You must keep the office tidy. You must respect your colleagues. These are rules or regulations, guidelines. I must clean the house. It's a mess. I must call my friend. I haven't spoken to them in ages. I must finish my taxes. Jesus, the deadline's coming up. The last three were things that I feel it is necessary to attend to take care of. I have a strong motivation to do these things. Must is that voice in your head saying, do it. It's really important that you do this. So it's kind of the motivator. It's your personal motivator. Have to is used in a similar way in positive sentences. We often teach this structure as relating to external obligation, rules or requirements from outside. An example of this: you have to wear a mask on this hospital ward. Okay, so you have to wear a mask in this hospital department. Or you have to stay seated on a plane when the fasten your seatbelt sign is on. Okay, that's just good sense, good logic. Those are external obligations, rules, laws, or expectations set by others. Native speakers often use must and have to interchangeably. So if you say, I must put on my seatbelt, or I have to wear my seatbelt, both are correct. Okay, they might subtly hint at internal or external obligation or motivation, depending on context, but native speakers use both interchangeably all the time. So it really isn't something to stress about if you use one more often than the other. One note, however, is that there's no past tense of must. If you want to talk about the past, you use had to. For example, I had to do my laundry last weekend, or I had to finish my taxes yesterday. Nightmare. So now let's focus on the stars, the structures that do cause confusion in kind of a funny way. And those are mustn't, must not, and don't have to, or doesn't have to, the negative forms. These are the two that cause confusion because they mean completely different things. One is prohibition, you mustn't, you must not, it's prohibited, you're not allowed. So, you mustn't smoke in public buildings. You mustn't drive on the wrong side of the road. You mustn't be drunk and disorderly in public. And let's face it, the last one you probably shouldn't do at home either. But these mean you have a strong obligation not to do something. On the other hand, you don't have to means that something is optional. There's no obligation, zero. So an example of this, you don't have to work tomorrow. You don't have to come to work tomorrow. Cool. So I can stay at home. Great. I could go to work if maybe there was a file that I needed that was there on the laptop, but in general, no, I'm okay. I can stay at home. Another example, you don't have to do your homework tonight. Okay, so maybe the student has to do it tomorrow, but there's no obligation to do it tonight. They could if they felt like it, but it's optional. They don't have to. Now, I suppose the key takeaway for this negative structure is that a lot of learners mix these up, especially when they copy the tone of mustn't with the structure of don't or doesn't have to. So here's an example with context. Let's say there is a gas leak in your office and the building has been evacuated. You left work early that afternoon and your boss calls you and says in an authoritative, almost angry manner, you don't have to come to the office tomorrow. Okay, so the boss's tone is strong, but their words say it's optional to you. So the tone and the meaning don't match. It's clear that the speaker wants to say must not. You mustn't come to the office tomorrow. But when they say don't have to, the mind of the native speaker is divided, okay? It's confused about the intention of the speaker. So let me give you another example of how strange it sounds when you use don't or doesn't have to instead of mustn't. So a teacher is speaking to students and says, you don't have to cheat on your exams. Okay, so this makes it sound optional not to cheat. Maybe 90% of students are cheating, but hey, look, you can too, but there's no obligation if you don't want to. It doesn't bother me. Okay, so that's the message. Obviously, if it's a rule, the teacher should and wants to say, you must not cheat on your exams. Otherwise, a black mark will go on your permanent record. Okay, so we remember that Don't have to or doesn't have to means there is no obligation. Must not or mustn't means there is a strong obligation not to do something. Finally, I'd just like to highlight simple pronunciation or natural pronunciation when it comes to these two structures. In natural English, have to is almost always contracted or reduced in sound, especially in fast or casual speech. It's pronounced more like have to. So, for example, I have to go sounds like I have to go. You have to be careful sounds like you have to be careful. They have to leave soon sounds like they have to leave soon. So the V in have becomes an F sound. And with must not in natural speech, native speakers drop the first T, okay, or else it's very soft. So it becomes mustn't. So for example, you mustn't smoke here. Okay, guys, those were the key things that I wanted to focus on today, especially the negative form of must not and have to. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Have a great week. Take care. Ciao. Ciao.